Haunted apartment. I had just moved into my new apartment. It wasn't much, one bedroom, small kitchen, creaky floors, but it was mine. And after weeks of searching, it felt like I had finally found the perfect place. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The walls were freshly painted, the rent was surprisingly affordable, and the landlord seemed eager to get the contract signed. Maybe a little too eager, but I ignored that. That first evening, I unpacked some boxes and tried to settle in. The place was quiet, almost too quiet. No traffic noises, no music from neighbors, not even a dog barking outside. Just silence. I brushed it off. After all, peace and quiet was exactly what I wanted. But as the night went on, I started noticing little things. When I closed the door to the bedroom closet and came back later, it was slightly open again. I swore I had shut it tight. The window in the living room rattled, even though it was locked, and I felt a cold draft sweep across the room. And then, right before bed, I heard it. The sound of slow, heavy footsteps in the hallway outside. I froze. It was late, way past midnight, and as far as I knew, I was the only tenant on that floor. When I opened the door and looked, the hallway was empty. I laughed nervously to myself, telling my brain it was just my imagination, probably nerves from moving in. But somewhere deep down, a thought was already forming. Something about this place didn't feel right. The first night in the new apartment ended with me lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that the footsteps I'd heard were just echoes from somewhere else in the building. Maybe the pipes, maybe the wood contracting in the cold. Old buildings make noises all the time. That's what I told myself as I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. But when I woke up the next morning, something was off. The first thing I noticed was my coffee mug. I clearly remembered leaving it on the kitchen counter before I went to bed. But now it was sitting on the small table near the window, on top of a neatly folded napkin I don't remember putting there. I stared at it for a long moment, my stomach tightening. Maybe I'd been too tired, maybe I'd done it without realizing. Still, it felt wrong. I brushed it off, made some fresh coffee, and went about my day. The second night was worse. I was unpacking more boxes, and while moving some books onto a shelf, I noticed something strange about the closet in the bedroom. The same closet door that had been slightly open the night before. I closed it carefully this time, making sure the latch clicked into place. But a couple of hours later, when I came back into the room, the door was wide open again. Not just a crack, wide open, as if someone had pulled it hard. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding. My first thought was that maybe the door frame was crooked, maybe the latch was faulty. I walked over, tested it, opened and closed it several times. It clicked shut each time, solid. It didn't budge when I pulled lightly. So how did it swing open on its own? That night, lying in bed, I kept staring at the closet. The door was shut, but I couldn't stop watching it, waiting for it to move. Eventually, I fell asleep, but it wasn't restful. The dreams came. I don't remember all the details, but there was a man, or maybe just the shape of a man, standing in the corner of the room, near the closet. His face was blurry, almost shifting, like smoke. In the dream he didn't move, he didn't speak, but I felt this crushing weight of dread, like he was waiting for something. Watching me, I woke up in a sweat, the image burned into my mind. And when I looked at the closet, my heart nearly stopped. The door was open again. I got up, slammed it shut, and this time I pushed a chair in front of it. That should have kept it closed. But in the morning, when I woke up, the chair was back against the wall, neatly pushed in as if nothing had happened, and the closet door stood wide open. By now I was rattled. I tried to rationalize. Sleepwalking? No, I'd never done that in my life. Maybe a neighbor had a spare key? But why would anyone sneak in just to move things around? It didn't make sense. The third night, I decided to test myself. I left a few small objects around the apartment in specific places. A book half on the edge of the table, a pen balanced across a cup, my shoes placed deliberately in the middle of the hallway. If anything moved, I'd know for sure. The next morning, my stomach dropped when I checked. The book was neatly placed on the shelf. The pen was gone entirely. My shoes had been lined up perfectly against the wall, like a soldier's uniform inspection. I stood in the middle of my apartment, holding my breath, waiting for some kind of sound, some sign that I wasn't losing my mind. But the silence pressed down heavier than ever. It wasn't just the objects anymore, either. The noises had started again. Soft whispers, just on the edge of hearing, coming from the living room. I'd walk in and hear nothing, but the moment I left, the whispers would start again. I told myself it was just the wind, the pipes, my imagination. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the apartment was trying to tell me something. On the fourth night, the air itself felt different. heavier. When I tried to sleep, the silence became unbearable, so I left my phone recording with the voice memo app, just to see if I could capture anything. The next morning, I played it back while drinking coffee. At first, it was just white noise, the sound of me shifting in bed, faint creaks of the floor. But around 3 in the morning, there was something else. A voice. Faint, whispering, but clear enough to make my skin crawl. A man's voice. Just one word, spoken close to the microphone. Here. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking. The voice wasn't mine. No one else was supposed to be there. For the rest of that day, I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every time I looked at the closet, my stomach twisted. Every time I heard a creak in the floorboards, my pulse spiked. That evening, I seriously thought about leaving, breaking the lease, packing my things, and never coming back. But a part of me was curious, stubborn even. I wanted to know what was happening in that apartment. So I stayed. That night, I pushed the chair back in front of the closet again, locked every window and door, and sat in bed with the lights on, staring at the shadows on the wall. The closet door didn't open that night. But around 3 a.m., as I started drifting off to sleep, I heard it again. Not whispers this time. Breathing. Slow, steady, ragged breathing, coming from inside the closet. And that's when I realized, whatever was happening in this apartment, it wasn't just my imagination anymore. By the third week in the apartment, I'd gone from skeptical to genuinely unsettled. At first, I told myself I was just tired from moving, or paranoid about living alone. But after the breathing, after the voice on the recording, I couldn't dismiss it anymore. Something was happening, and I wanted proof. I've always been a logical person, the kind who likes evidence. If I could capture it, sound, video, anything, I could show it to someone. Maybe even convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. So I started documenting everything. The first step was my phone. Every night before bed, I'd leave the voice memo app running, just like the night I caught that whisper. But I also downloaded a motion detection app that could activate the camera whenever something moved. The second step was writing. I bought a cheap spiral notebook and turned it into a logbook. Every time something strange happened, I wrote it down. The date, the time, exactly what I saw or heard. At first, it was small things. Closet door open again, even with the chair in front. Mug in the kitchen moved. Woke up to find the lights in the living room on, though I turned them off before bed. It felt almost clinical, like I was studying my own haunting. But then the recordings got stranger. One morning, I listened back and heard something faint on the audio around 2:47 a.m. A dragging sound, like furniture scraping slowly across the floor. My heart pounded as I checked every room. Nothing had moved. The next night, I caught a different sound. It wasn't dragging this time. It was humming. A low, tuneless hum, like someone idly singing to themselves. The voice was deep, definitely male. But the worst part? On the recording, it sounded like it was coming from right beside my bed. I barely slept that night. After that, I decided to buy an actual camera, not just my phone. I set up an old camcorder I borrowed from a friend, propped it on a tripod, and aimed it at the bedroom. I let it run while I slept. The first 2 nights, nothing. Just me tossing and turning. But on the third night, something happened. At 3:12 a.m., the video showed the closet door. It was closed at the beginning of the recording. Then, slowly, with no one touching it, the door creaked open. I sat frozen at my desk, watching the playback over and over again, goosebumps crawling over my skin. But that wasn't the worst part. About 10 seconds after the door opened, a shadow passed across the room. Not like a trick of the light, a solid, human-shaped shadow, moving from the closet toward the camera. And then the feed glitched. For about 3 seconds, the screen went black. When the picture came back, the closet door was wide open, and the chair I had placed in front of it was neatly moved aside. I wanted to throw up. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom, too scared to sleep in the bedroom. But even there, I couldn't escape it. Around 4 a.m., I heard a faint scratching sound on the bathroom door, like fingernails slowly dragging across the wood. By morning, I was exhausted and shaken. But when I opened the notebook to log everything, I noticed something new. On a blank page, one I hadn't touched yet, there was writing. The words were faint, shaky, almost smudged, but I could still read them. Stop watching. My hands went cold. I hadn't written it. No one else had a key. At that point, documenting didn't feel safe anymore. But at the same time, I couldn't stop. It was like I was caught in some horrible experiment, and every night the activity escalated because I was recording it. The more I tried to catch it, the stronger it became. By the end of the week, I had hours of unsettling evidence. Footsteps circling my bed. Doors opening and closing by themselves. That same low humming, sometimes louder, sometimes whispering my name. And every morning, when I checked the notebook, there would be more writing. Short phrases that didn't make sense. We see you. Don't sleep. It's not yours. I stopped eating properly. I barely slept. My whole life outside the apartment started to collapse. I was late for work. I avoided friends. I couldn't think about anything else. I should have left then. But I didn't, because part of me needed to know. What was it? Who, or what, was inside my apartment with me? The logical part of my brain kept whispering. Maybe it's an intruder. Maybe someone found a way in. But the evidence was impossible to explain away. The shadows, the voices, the writing in the notebook. Whatever it wasn't human. And deep down, I started to realize something terrifying. It wasn't just haunting the apartment. It was haunting me. By the time the 4th week rolled around, I had stopped pretending that things were normal. My apartment wasn't just strange anymore, it was alive, restless, and it wanted me to know it. Every night, I'd sit in bed, staring at the closet, waiting for something to happen. And it always did. Sometimes it was just the humming. Sometimes the scratching on the walls. Sometimes the sound of heavy breathing so close I could feel it brush against my skin. But there comes a point where fear turns into exhaustion. I couldn't keep living in limbo, waiting to be terrified every single night. So I made a decision. I was going to confront it. That Friday night, I prepared myself like I was going into battle. I set up the camcorder again, this time in the living room facing the hallway. I left the bedroom door wide open. I wanted a clear view of everything. I placed the notebook on the coffee table with a pen beside it, almost like I was daring whatever this was to write something in front of me. And for the first time since moving in, I didn't hide under the covers or flee to the bathroom. I sat in a chair, lights dimmed, waiting. The clock ticked past midnight. The silence was heavy, suffocating. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the occasional creak of the floor beneath me. But nothing else. Then, around 2:30 a.m., the temperature dropped. Not just a little, it was like the entire apartment had turned into a walk-in freezer. My breath fogged in front of me. I gripped the arms of the chair, my heart pounding. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. I know you're here. Show yourself. For a moment, nothing. And then, the closet door creaked. Slowly, painfully, it swung open. The chair I had pushed in front of it earlier slid neatly aside on its own, scraping across the floor. And then I heard it. The humming, louder this time, closer. Not from the closet anymore, but right behind me. I spun around, but of course there was nothing. Just shadows on the wall. My chest tightened, adrenaline surging. I grabbed the notebook and shouted, if you can move things, if you can make noises, then write something. Right now, in front of me. For a few seconds, the silence was so sharp it hurt. Then, slowly, the pen lifted off the table. I froze, my jaw slack. The pen hovered in the air for a second before scratching across the page. The sound of it made my skin crawl. When it dropped back onto the table, I forced myself to look. 3 words, scrawled in jagged, uneven handwriting. Don't look back. My pulse skyrocketed. Don't look back? Back at what? Almost on instinct, I turned anyway. And I saw it. In the far corner of the room, half hidden in the shadows, stood a figure. Tall, motionless. Its face was obscured, like smoke curling over a mirror. But the outline was unmistakable, it was human. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. We just stared at each other, or at least, I felt it staring, even though I couldn't see its eyes. Then, without a sound, it took a step toward me. The lights flickered. The camcorder whined. The walls seemed to vibrate. I snapped out of it and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the chair. Stay away from me, I shouted, my voice cracking. The figure froze. The humming stopped. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The corner was empty again. But the damage was done. When I checked the notebook later, more words had appeared, beneath the first message. I hadn't seen the pen move this time. But the writing was there, jagged and urgent, too late. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I didn't even sit down. I paced the apartment, lights blazing, heart still hammering in my chest. For the first time, I knew with absolute certainty. Whatever was in that apartment wasn't just playing with me anymore. It wanted something, and I was terrified to find out what. I didn't leave the apartment that weekend. Part of me wanted to pack a bag and run, but another part, the stubborn, reckless part, refused. I had invested too much fear, too much sleeplessness, to walk away without answers. For 2 nights, nothing happened. No humming, no footsteps, no writing in the notebook. Just silence. You'd think that would have calmed me, but instead it made me more anxious. It felt like the apartment was waiting, biding its time, letting me stew in paranoia. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to push things further. I dragged the mattress into the living room, right in front of the closet, and laid down with the notebook in my hands and the camcorder rolling. If something wanted to show itself, it would have to go through me first. The hours crawled by, midnight passed, then 1, then 2. My eyelids grew heavy. I tried to stay awake, but exhaustion was winning. That's when I heard it. Not humming, not breathing, whispering, multiple voices, overlapping, like a chorus murmuring in the dark. I sat bolt upright, clutching the notebook. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The whispers grew louder, closer, until they blended into one harsh word, repeated over and over: "Leave. Leave. Leave." The closet door rattled violently, as if something inside was trying to claw its way out. The air grew thick and sour, the temperature plummeted. My breath came out in ragged clouds. And then, silence. I forced myself to stand and reach for the closet door. My hands shook on the handle. "If you want me gone," I said, barely above a whisper, "then show me why." I pulled the door open. At first, nothing, just empty shelves, a few boxes stacked in the corner. But then the camcorder light flickered, and I saw it: scratches. Hundreds of deep gouges carved into the back wall of the closet. Some were just chaotic lines, but others formed words. "We wait, we see, we keep," and at the very bottom, almost hidden beneath the boxes, a final message: "Not yours." The whisper surged again, so loud I clapped my hands over my ears. The camcorder screeched with static. And then, from the dark inside the closet, two pale hands reached out. I stumbled backward, tripping over the mattress. The hands gripped the doorframe, followed by a shadowy figure pulling itself into the room. It was the same thing I had seen before, tall, faceless, a shifting blur of smoke and darkness. But now it wasn't just watching. It was crawling out. "Stay back," I screamed, grabbing the notebook and flinging it at the figure. The moment it hit, the lights exploded, bulbs shattering, sparks raining down. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. The apartment was calm. The lights were fixed, unbroken. The closet stood wide open, empty. No scratches on the walls. The notebook was gone. For a moment, I thought maybe I had dreamed the entire thing. But when I checked the camcorder, the footage was corrupted, hours of static. All except for the last few seconds. The video showed me, asleep on the mattress. The closet door was closed. Then, slowly, it opened, and a dark figure stepped out, standing over me. The video cut to black. I moved out that same day. I didn't even bother to pack everything. I left furniture, clothes, dishes. I just wanted to get out. The landlord didn't ask questions. In fact, when I told him I was leaving, he just nodded, almost like he expected it. It's been weeks now. I'm staying at a friend's place across town. At first, I felt relief. I told myself I had escaped, that whatever haunted that apartment was still there, locked inside those walls. But last night, I woke up to a familiar sound. A low, tuneless humming, coming from the corner of my friend's room. And now I'm left with one final, terrifying question. Was it the apartment that was haunted, or was it me all along?